So we're getting towards the end of 2023, and I thought, well, let's do a quick episode.
A couple weeks left.
Yeah, we don't have much, which is like, the anxiety of holidays and families and work stuff and everything coming together. You're supposed to have fun, right? But it's supposed It's supposed to be, I don't know, like joyous, but I think it's never that way. But then it's exciting looking at next year and seeing what happens, what kind of goals you have set and everything. So I thought we would do a quick episode and just kind of outline some things that are not like super surprising that you would think what should be thinking about at the end of the year here if you have a company that's growing, but just to kind of bring it top of mind. So the first thing I thought of when preparing this was if I'm talking to a company that's growing and they're looking out at 2024 or at the end of any year to the next one, what are the top things they should be thinking about? The first thing that came to mind was, let's say you're an owner, CEO, you should be talking to your leadership and listening, right?
Yes.
Not only leadership, that sit on the same side, but your downline leadership that are running or managing people. So it's sitting with them in whatever form, physical, Slack, email, whatever, and talking to them, getting on a pulse. And this can happen various ways. It can be, periodic. It can be all at once. Whatever works for your company or culture. But being intentional to spend 5 minutes and say, what happened this year that you would want to change? What's the one thing that you would want to change? And really listening and putting everything aside and saying, I really want to listen, not to say that we're actually going to change it, but I want to listen. Because I think that leaders get in their world doing the things to run the company, which is fine. Just like all the downlines get in their world doing things to manage the company, and they forget to take the time to detach and have a real conversation about what's happening. It can go from one productive meeting to the next, and the sinew or connective tissue kind of gets lost.
But I think
I'm curious how you approach that.
We need to differentiate too. There are a lot of industries that this is their busy time of year too.
Yes.
So maybe that is the physical end of the year, but maybe it's not the time to do that.
Yeah.
But especially in my world, things do kind of like in some areas go to a screeching halt.
Mm-hmm.
So, absolutely. And I've been thinking about this a lot this year because this year has been kind of a lot of external events that are happening in the banking world.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, in external to happen. We're coming post out of COVID. So we had a huge change of the way people operated their daily lives. And now we're out of that. Mm-hmm. And are people going to continue the same way they were doing prior to COVID, mm-hmm. which, partially they are, partially they aren't. Yeah. And so, now is a fantastic time to get in there and getting the pulse of your staff in every different area. So
getting a check on morale.
Yeah. And, a lot of that I think you kind of see throughout the year.
Yes,
generally
you do.
Too.
Yes, you do.
And so then, but now with myself, I'm planning on doing a little takeaway with, the top head of each department mm-hmm. area and then seeing what they want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Over the next year and things.
Because I think also, like you're saying, throughout the year, you do get a pulse. And if you are the type of leader who is being intentional throughout the year, then you're going to probably know pretty close. But taking that time to just check in a way that's not related to metrics or not related to other things that they would already normally, give you an answer for.
Outside of, what are predictions, economists are wrong 9 times out of 10. Mm-hmm. There's going to be one. But for you, what can happen over the next year? There are things that I'm not saying will happen, but there's a probability that inflation is going to continue to rise and even get more out of control.
It's not going to go backwards.
So in that case, if inflation continues to rise and then everybody's income is not keeping up with the inflation, I think of everybody's annual income as a pie. So greater percentage of that pie is going to go to housing and food. Mm-hmm. The sustainable, those are the first priorities. And then it's going to go to, maybe transportation outside of that, depending on where you're at.
Yeah.
So then what's less for other activities, are your products falling into that bucket? Mm-hmm. So I think now you kind of really need to look into okay, where do you fall in? So go on two lines of directories with your business. Okay, what do we do to tighten up and rise in inflation?
Mm-hmm.
You know, do we need to look at the additional suppliers? Are our suppliers coming through? You know, what is the most important in your end result? Who's the most critical vendors?
Yeah.
You know, I think also getting a pulse of where they're at too is extremely important going into the future. So, you know, I think we all need to always prepare for the worst too, and prepare on both angles. You know, okay, if rapid inflation continues to happen, yes, here are the controls that we've done, and here are things we in place. If it doesn't, it continues status quo and we increase, how do we do? You know, that's kind of what I was thinking of last night, mindset, because you can never predict irrationality of especially consumer behavior. You know, you can always predict that things are going to change, but you don't always know exactly how it's going to be.
That's right.
So just predict for predictable outcomes. You don't have to believe it's going to happen, but there's always a possibility that these things can happen.
Planning for it. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know, in our world, okay, now banks are going to believe that, okay, interest rates are going to lower down. What if they don't?
Yeah.
We're going to be. You're going to always plan for that?
Yeah.
No, you need to plan on both scenarios. Or three, rates stay the same, rates go up, rates go down.
Yeah.
Go on three trajectories. What are you going to do to protect yourself on all three?
A plan A, B, and C.
Correct.
Yeah.
And a lot of plans you can do at the same time. So
a lot of them require the same components for the most part. It's just variations.
Yeah. It's
not like
it's almost, you know, my daughter was talking about, you know, she's looking at two fields to go into. She's thinking of aeronautical or in you know, medical fields, you know, so that. So the first 2 years, you know, a lot of the classes cross over. Now, granted, the first 2 years, you're not going to that. So meantime, she's going both angles. She's going to take care of all the classes that cross over. Yeah. And then as each year goes, you narrow down.
Yeah.
And so,
and it could be a little bit more work for her in those 2 years, but being forward thinking, some of it won't map because, you know, you're taking English, 301 or whatever, but you know, whatever the kind of BS courses that the colleges make you take in the first couple of years. But some of those classes, if you've done a little bit more work because you're trying to be forward thinking, will map, like the things you learn and the way you think will map to things in the future. And you might not have had that if you hadn't have added those in. So a plan A, B, and C can be, you know, helpful because you're allowing yourself to think strategically first about your business, and you're getting back to, you know, all the different avenues that could have. I mean, that's a smart leader, smart business person to not just kind of rest on how it's always been, or what the future looks like in its entirety. You have to be able to know your business enough to look to see those other thinking things.
I know for us, one of the major focuses in 2024, we've got to prepare for additional and, you know, software. You know, we're looking at either replacing, going with existing, new. You know, that's always with us.
You always want to stay up to date.
Correct.
On that back end
and
piece,
you know, you can't always be that 1 year. You can't do it every year.
Yeah.
But we see then it's going to be a year. So now we're going to have to build enough and not necessarily overhire in the beginning, but make sure that, you know, staff is working at 80%, not 95%.
Yep.
So we're going to have to build into that. So there's room for as soon as we get additional software into this, you know, then you have to have time. You got to validate it after you put it in place, make sure, you know, what you anticipated was going to work did work.
Yeah.
You can't just assume. You need to validate it immediately afterwards. Yeah. And you got to have time. You got to have your best people on that so they can't be bogged down for everything else.
Yeah.
So, you know, that we're going to strategically plan for that. Meanwhile, you can't stop on growth. Doesn't matter. You know, it's like you got to repair the boat as you're sailing.
That's right.
You know, once you've got an existing business, you know, startup's cool. You know, I think startup is easy.
Yes.
You know, now what's hard is
once you get into business, it is. When you're starting up, it doesn't seem easy. No,
it's
all perspective.
But as far as, you know, correct, but you've got a singular focus too on a startup. Yeah. Like, okay, we're growing this, we're growing sales.
You don't have the complexity yet.
No. So once you get an organization that is, you know, 10 years, 20, 30 years, you know, you've got a lot more complexity. So
that's right.
you've got to grow. You can't stop your car. You know, if you want to replace your car, the engine, you've got to rebuild that engine as you're driving.
Well, I like the analogy of the sailboat because I know you probably follow YouTubers that sail.
Oh, yeah.
I have too. And it's fascinating because I don't sail and I don't really know that world, but through their eyes, I've learned a little bit. And it's fascinating because when you're out on the ocean and ocean's unpredictable, the market's unpredictable. I mean, plan A, B, and C, it could be a D that you're looking at. So it's interesting with the sailboat analogy because your survival is directly in relation to the risk you take out on the water. If you're not going to stay at harbor and you're going to go out and have an adventure and see things and experience things and grow, then you have an inherent risk that you're taking at some degree, and it's unknown what you can read the charts, look at the weather patterns, everything, and a storm can come in from nowhere. And I think to your point, like you talk about a lot about efficiencies too. I think in the downtimes when you are at harbor and you're not planning a trip, or maybe you're in the planning stage, that's where you do all your repairs.
Correct. That's when you test everything.
Plan for A, B, and C. Okay, I'm going out with great weather, but if bad weather comes, what happens if this happens? And I'm going to try to put as much in place as possible, budget, considering budget, capacity, et cetera. So that when you go out, you're prepared as you can possibly be.
And, you've got in there, what is the most likely to break down?
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a backup for that?
Right.
Can we bring that back up? Is it too heavy? Is it too this? Run through those scenarios.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of things that you can have backup very easily, and there's a lot of things you can't.
Yeah.
So then you have to maintain those things that you can't, sort of back up.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say, for sure right now, in a boat, but we're not going to be able to put the sail, we're not going to be able to pull our boat out of water and replace the engine.
Right.
Because, we can't stop, people still have to, be able to process accounts and transfer money.
Yeah.
So we're going to, keep the boat out in the ocean and, take out that engine and put a new engine in while we're sailing.
Well, that kind of leads me to the second thing, which is casting vision. If you're in the harbor making your plans and you're thinking smartly about your business, about what you know, what you've seen, what you're seeing, and you're planning that next adventure, the next trip. If it's a long voyage, which is typically going to be, and it's always going to be longer than you think, then you're planning for these things. That is the vision that you're calling your employees to next. And so, and then I would say if you broke that down to a practical kind of mission-oriented way of thinking, it becomes goals. Now, here are the goals that we are going to try to measure and measure our adventure by. But the vision is we're going from here to there. So I think that if leadership's doing their job, they are always understanding the market more, always understanding their business more and that fit so that they can cast a vision. Hopefully they have a vision that's exciting for employees. So when you're in these meetings, it's not only listening to them, but also speaking back to say, how that fits into where you're going.
Well, now, and I think it's more now to talk to your employees, let them know too that okay, life is uncertain. Now you've seen it. Here's what we're doing to prepare that even in uncertain times, we're still going to exist. We're still going to exist well. We were able to, I know we did a very good job being able to increase salaries at or even greater than CPI and keep up with inflation rates. That was the main goal.
Yeah.
Keep that up. Now, we're going to be able to still continue that here in the future.
It makes me think of these other banks. They ride the market, and we were using the sailboat analogy where it's like they put their crew at risk, their employees at risk, because they're doing the opposite of what you're saying. They are out on the high sea at whatever cost to get wherever they're going, and that cost comes to the employees, to the ship, to all the things.
Oh yeah.
Whereas I don't think. Typically, you see bigger businesses doing that because they're chasing the share price.
Well, then a lot of times,
and smaller businesses not. But I think that that's generally the case. But I think that that's not a smart way to run a business, even if it's a big business, because you want to take care of your people so that you have sustainment down the road, and you want to take care of your ship so you have sustainment down the road. And you want to. I don't think it's smart to just brute force through waves to get where you're going to go, and
No,
just
you're gonna
let things,
you're gonna destroy your whole by doing that.
right. So, I think it's smart in terms of growing and being sustainable, but also smart to be good by your people. You're being good by the people who are actually, rowing the ship to get you there.
And I feel too that we're having a back to a cultural shift of the where, I don't know about you, but a sentiment where employees could give two shits about their employer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it's kind of been over the last few years with that quietly quitting BS movement, where it was like, oh, it's not in my job description and my boss asked me to do one more thing, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, on the employer side, well, if you're dedicated to work, X amount of hours a day, and you work from home with those 9 hours a day, if you're done with what was in the policy and you're still within that, are you kidding me? You're complaining about the extra, like you had that quietly quitting.
Yeah.
So I think that mentality is going to get rooted out.
Oh, for sure.
AI is going to replace that mentality, and we'll get back to, a nice symbiotic where the employers both respect each other.
Right.
Because,
I mean,
it is hard, because
a
lot of times employees will see, okay, you've had, maybe the company's had great success, and, now they, deserve an immediate bump. Yes, in some degrees they do, but not necessarily to that scale to where they are, because you got to put some in reserve for the rainy day, And I'm thinking now with the shift, and especially in the financial and fintech world, people are back to appreciating stability and not just,
Well, I think the root that's in a lot of those situations is that employees want to feel, especially today, they want to feel like they are contributing, they're having impact. And I think that the common denominator there is that the companies, I think for the most part, want them to have impact. So the transparency in this, kind of getting to the first point of listening and then responding and matching the impact with the vision of where the company's going, those conversations are going to be organic. That's when they're most natural. I think that's when you're going to end up with the best fit from a employee-employer situation, where there's more transparency on the employer side, and there's more honesty on the employee side. And when that conversation happens, there's a better fit for morale and for culture. And I think I've always said this, I think culture really is the best measurement point for where a company is going and where it's been.
And I know personally, I need to spend more time on explaining and letting everybody know, here's the vision. So, that's going to be a focus, the first of the year, of getting in there and letting everybody know. And here's the layout. I
think it's good for people to know where things are headed, because then they know where they can have impact, and
Correct.
You might find one or two people are like, I'm not on board with that. I'm out.
No, because
and that's good.
When
for them and for you,
when you are a small company, and a small company under 100 employees, you're still not to that set where, you've got, a training school for new people. People are still learning on site. It's not like, we're not big enough where I can hire somebody and, all right, here's a dedicated trainers for 2 months. And now when you're on your job, now you know exactly what to do and your procedures. No, there's still, small businesses, there's still ambiguity when you're onboarding new people. So I know we've having to find people that are in that comfort zone of, I'm done.
You're not trying to create robots. You're trying to create, new people that are people.
Correct.
Which differentiates you in the market.
Even if you are brand new and you're a part-time teller, if you want to set aside, we've got the library of if you just, all they had to do, if they just read procedures and policies, I guarantee you, they can find enhancements in there
for sure.
Doing their job.
For sure. Yep.
And tell them, you bring an enhancement to us that saves time.
Oh yeah.
Are you kidding me? That's the way to move up. Because we can't go back and
owning that domain and thinking for yourself. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Okay. The only other thing I had on here, which we've kind of covered, is building systems for efficiencies, but I think starting with those conversations and letting those let the organic conversations of what comes out of those the transparency of it all, lead is going to point you exactly to the last thing you just said. It's going to point you to, hey, if we did this, it would make our lives better in one way or another, more productive, more efficient, whatever. It's going to lead to a more productive and a more kind of safe, safe place for employees, a more robust culture, a better morale, at least all of those things, because there's transparency on the table. So I think these are very fundamental things that everyone pretty much knows. It's more of just reminding you to kind of get back to the basics of, what it looks like to kind of reboot for another year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good.
Great.